morning. Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this second day of May 2023. I want to reintroduce the panelists here in studio. We have Honorable Priscilla Nyokabi from the Center for Multi-Party Democracy. Good morning.
Good morning.
How have you been?
No, keeping well. Can't complain.
Great.
Except that the country has problems. As a person, I'm good.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Wow, that's interesting. We'll interrogate that further. You appear to be the only person without problems. Chris Kilonzo is the Vice Chair of the Political Parties Liaison Committee. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
Which is your political party?
Umoja Maendeleo Party.
Umoja Maendeleo Party.
Umoja na Maendeleo Party.
Umoja na Maendeleo. So that is UMP. UMP.
Yes.
You have an elected MP?
No,
yeah?
no.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
All right. Then Anne Derito is the Registrar of Political Parties. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
How have you been? We haven't spoken since the election, I think.
Yeah, I think this is the first show I'm having after elections.
Great. It's good to have you here.
Yeah.
Let's begin actually with you and tell us about, because just before the election, we got to learn that there were some 82 or 83 political parties that had been cleared to participate in the election. How would you say, from your assessment, how did we fare in terms of the political parties that are able to send people to either county assemblies or parliament or even other elective positions?
I would say we forwarded about 83 parties, but about 78 were the ones who finally participated. Others faced some challenges. Either the nomination rules were not fully engaged, and also some would not really front candidates. So we ended up with 78 political parties that participated in the last general election. Those political parties had over 11,000 candidates out of the 16,000. They had about 11,600 candidates, and the rest up to 16,000. The rest, about 4,000, were from independent candidates. We can say that political parties actually fared very well because finally over 96% of all elected leaders, actually 98% of elected leaders are from political parties. And that is the story that we have been saying, that politics is better done through political parties. And we think that political parties should be strengthened as institutions of governance and institutions of good governance, so that in the final analysis, because they are the ones that finally even produce government and representation, then they become good instruments that Kenyans can use and celebrate.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you were to look at what defines them, I remember there was, during the review of the Political Parties Act, they were talking about, there's a term they introduced, the ideals of a political party. Would you say, how distinct are they? Or are they just almost repetition across the 78 parties that participated? Like, what defines them, each of the political parties?
Every political party has its own constitution and its own presumptions of what they stand for. But basically speaking, in the post-election period, we are looking at the ideology of political parties. And for the first time in the Political Parties Act, we introduced the concept of ideology. It was not there. So we are in the implementation stage to ensure that every political party has a distinct ideology. We have a project, actually, that we are calling the Ideology Project. We are starting by making the guidelines of what an ideology looks like. Then we start by training the political parties, and then we lead them into writing political party statement of ideology. And I think that is part of strengthening political parties, because as you're saying, sometimes there's no clarity within the political party ideology. Some of them are very distinct. You can see these parties following this kind of ideology, but some are not clear. But we say, because probably we have not, it is the first time that it is being demanded by law that parties should have a political party ideology. So we are embarking on training them and helping them then come with the ideology, and also regroup them For example, there are parties, you are going to find there are so many parties that will be registered on the comfort of green. But then they are not even talking about the climate change when the need comes for them to talk about. So we group them and help them understand. And I think we are growing that space of ideology.
Right. Honorable Priscilla, from the Center of Multi-Party Democracy, first of all, how different is that space for someone who's served as an MP, then as a commissioner, and now back with the political parties at that helm? How different is it? What are you having to deal with at the moment?
I think the same conversation that the URPP has started, the ideology of parties, and what has happened with CMD, which was where you could take their letter. So now we've come a long way from that. Parties now have established offices, have established programs, have established accounts, have established governance institutions, the NECs, the management committees, the governing councils. And I was just doing a list of some of our oldest parties. I mean, KANU is an old party, Independence Party, Ford Kenya, Wiper, ODM, Na Kenya, Jubilee, and now the youngest party being the UDA, and another young parties like the one that our friend here comes from. So in terms of history of parties, we seem to be growing. Until the 2010, we didn't even have political parties in the Constitution. In fact, the earlier studies of law were that political parties were private clubs. And you only, like Parklands Club or like Muthaiga Golf Club, private clubs. So we've come a long way from the private club approach to now institutions of governance, vehicles of power, the president coming from a party, the ruling coalition coming from a party. So it is a journey of democracy. And the difference I now see is where we are going on ideology. Because the conversation, like even the dialogue we now have, the reason it can't happen is because the political parties are not strong. And if you look at the deficit in budget, for example, and I like that the ORPP spoke about green party, environment. And in the West, green parties are a big thing. In Netherlands, in Denmark, where CMD actually came from when it came to Kenya. Look at the balanced budget. A party can vie on being a balanced budget. One of the biggest problems with our budget has just been deficit. We have refused to cut our coat according to our cloth. We cut a huge coat and we don't have the cloth year after year. And you come into a huge deficit, like this particular 3.6 trillion. I can't even tell you the level of deficit is going to cause in this country. The measures are there to correct the deficit. So a political party, like my own party of Jubilee, or whichever party, can vie on a balanced budget. That we, as a political party, are going to give Kenya a balanced budget. And we're going to give Kenya a budget that the income and the expenditure are as close to each other as possible. That's where we are going. And I am hoping that the journey will be a bit fast-tracked. We tried a little bit in this election with the bottoms-up approach and the 10-point agenda for Azimio. And we are still on that journey. I think that maybe in the 2027 election, we should see a much better change, depending, for example, on how the ruling coalition implements what they are calling better, the bottom-up, transformative agenda. If they manage to implement that, it is possible now to start convincing people on ideology. And that brings me to the last point of party discipline. That is also what causes party discipline. Because you can't be Jubilee at night and then ODM in the afternoon and then Wiper in the evening. I mean, people can't even understand you. Like what happened in this election. If your people elect you on a Jubilee ticket, they actually expect you to continue with that journey. You can't wake up the morning after the election and cross over. It's something very, and even if you look at our history, for example, there is an election we call the Little General election, when the members of KPU crossed over from KANU. They actually went for an election. The former Prime Minister, when he crossed over, he went for an election. That's how it should be. But we are on a journey. It's a journey of 1,000 miles. I think we've only probably taken 2.
2 steps. Okay, that's interesting, and we'll get deeper to that. But I want to hear from you, Chris, because you come from, should I say, a minority party or a small party, because you told me that you don't have an elected MC or an elected legislator at the national level. So how is it for you? Because also the financing of political parties follows a certain formula. So how easy is it for you to express yourselves and to even tell the people we are here and this is what we believe in?
Actually, Sam, I'll start by saying after many interactions with Mwananchi on ground, we have come to realize that many people don't know even what is the meaning of a political party. Probably I can start from saying that a political party is an association of people with similar political aims and opinions aimed at proposing or supporting candidates with one major aim of influencing or forming the government. Out of that sum, purposes of political parties are also there. And one of the purposes for these political parties, actually the key role of these political parties is to enhance democratic participation through political mobilization by encouraging the public to participate in elections, by enabling citizens to express in presidential, parliamentary, and county governments.
Right.
Political parties are also instruments in formulating public policies, recruitment, and selection of political offices, political leaders. Yes.
So therefore, how easy is it for you to express yourselves, to earn your space?
It's been very difficult, given that my registrar is here and she knows how much we are suffering as parties that don't have any money. But we are surviving. We are surviving.
How so? So how do you finance your programs, for instance?
Mostly through our pockets and friends.
Okay.
Yes.
And Registrar, of course, there has been conversations about the money for political parties. I think, is it some time late last year, there are complaints that the money has not been released because there was conflict about the formula that was being used. How far has that gone?
We resolved, and that was resolved, and money was released for first and second quarter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the political parties are being financed as individuals or as coalitions, for instance, in the case of Azimio, because it was a coalition political party. So is it money for ODM, for Wiper, or it's for Azimio coalition then to share amongst themselves?
No, it's for Political Parties Act expect that parties are funded as individual parties, not coalition. And there's no provision of funding a coalition in the current law. Therefore, we fund a political party that has qualified using the criteria set out in the Political Parties Act. So once that criteria is subjected to the result of elections, that's when we resort to these are the parties that are qualifying and these ones have not qualified. So currently we have about 48 political parties that qualified, and it's on proportional allocation depending on how many votes you got, how many seats you got, and how many women and youth and person with disability you brought on board. This is the criteria. But the first qualifying criteria is that a party must have at least an elected representative. So once you do that, that's the entry point. Okay. Then you the others now
at least one.
At least one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, because the formula changed.
The formula changed.
It's now more favorable.
Yeah. The formula changed in the last legal reform, the Amendment Act of 2022. So it increased the space. I don't know whether it increased too much or so. But the funds, we resolved those issues of formulas and all that, and we now distributed the money.
How much was it in total?
The original budget was 1.4 billion.
1.4 billion.
Yeah.
And what is the range? The least receiving party, how much are they getting?
Some of them, because it depends on how many votes you got. Yeah. The least party that is receiving about 500,000.
500,000. And the highest?
The highest, it could be 400 and, 500 and something million.
Okay. That would be UDA?
UDA, yes.
Okay. Okay, very interesting. So what are your thoughts about political parties like UMP that Chris comes from? Because, see, they most likely didn't participate in the previous election because they didn't have the resources to mobilize. Now, for this term, they won't receive anything because they have no elected representative, but they still need some space of action. What are your thoughts about that? What should happen?
One, just like he has rightly defined, a political party is supposed to bring on board people who are like-minded and they have an agenda themselves. I do not think that the original concept is that agenda should be financed by public funds. That original agenda, because it's the people who have come together with a certain agenda, with certain principles, and they want to advance some principles of governance and influence public policy, and also present candidates to elections and all that. I think the original purpose of that group is that they should know where to get the finances, because it's the idea. You have come up with the idea, then you must mobilize the members of like-minded mind so that they fund that idea. In other democracies, the membership of a political party is taken very seriously. And that's where we want to go as a country, that when you are a member, you feel obligated to contribute to that political party.
Right.
And you feel that your contribution, whether in kind or in cash, is actually being noticed by the political party, and you are advancing an agenda. So that you also create a level of competition in terms of how you present your ideas and ideology and all that,
right.
And the citizens are attracted to you, then they are going to really contribute towards that, so that in the next election, then you have so many elected leaders or so many votes, so that you're able to qualify then for the fund.
Right.
So I think it's the parties themselves, the one who, the founders and the people who really have come together need to be very creative to also know how to fund that and influence membership and look for a way of funding their own idea, because it's actually theirs. It becomes a public interest after elections, and there are so many representative of leaders that have come in. That's when now the formula set in.
Okay. And Honorable Priscilla, what are your thoughts about, because I remember just before the election, there were conversations about the memberships, and there are parties that were claiming that a certain political party stole membership from us, and I think there was a lot of hit on the register of political parties here, even them having to explain the process of how you're recruited. But how do you see that, the participation of citizens in political parties, and how does that translate against national elections at a time that I think there is a higher membership in political parties than the ultimate participation in the general election, especially if you have to consider the presidential race?
I think it's a bit like a pyramid, which is completely acceptable, because political parties, and he says it correctly, is a place for interests. And that is where interests are supposed to be negotiated. So I personally don't mind that we have many parties, including parties that are now not parliamentary, because that's what happens. After the election, you then have parliamentary parties and non-parliamentary parties. The non-parliamentary parties, like the one for our friend, wanaendelea kuuza sera, huku hoping in the next election watu watakuwa wamenunua sera. The parliamentary parties go into the systems of governance, be it at county level or at national level. And so at the lower level of the pyramid, you have the 83 going up to 90 parties. Then now, and I love the formula for funding. It was always a big contest, because originally the parties that were being funded were very few. And remember, this is where we draw a pool of leaders from, the national leaders. So you have a base of all political parties, which is why, in fact, going in the future, there is no problem around county parties, around parties that are not even national. We might even need to look at some of the principles in the Constitution, so that the lower eastern counties, for example, can set up a party for the lower eastern issues. The minorities in the north can set up a party for minority issues in the north, because a party is a vehicle for your negotiation of your interests. And then at now, the level at which parties have received funding, the 48, I think 48, with the new criteria. And I love that in the new criteria we introduced the women, the youth and persons with disability, and the programs that you need. Then you have 48. At parliamentary level, I think we have about 20. We don't also have all the parties that have been funded. Not all of them are parliamentary parties. And every party is then convincing people that we are the best in terms of the issues that we vie on. And when you come to parliament, you then practice politics from the political party that you come from and the region that you come from. And you know, we in Africa are being bad-mouthed for doing ethnic politics. There is nothing wrong with ethnocentric politics. There is nothing wrong with me being a Kikuyu and being a proud Kikuyu and being a Nyerian and fighting very hard for Nyeri interest, including the 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling, including the resources that then come to my county. Because when my county doesn't get resources, then we can't get the health, we can't get education, we can't get water. We at CMD fight for those ones under SDGs, and have even a program with the ORPP around a manifesto that is based on the SDGs. So if you practice politics that way, you then become a very formidable leader. Because if, for example, the bottoms-up approach in agriculture favors you, bottom up, that one.
Yes.
If agriculture, which I personally agree with, I support agriculture, so my party supports agriculture. We are now voting on an agriculture motion in Parliament. We are voting on the resources to agriculture. I can participate in that vote. tomorrow they come up with another policy of importing maize. I may not agree with importing maize because it affects agriculture. So I can then vote because of the issues that brought me to Parliament. And we have a long way to go in terms of this education around political parties. And that is why then the stealing, you know, you then can't be stolen. I mean, you are a person. It's a bit like this theory of marriage where your husband is stolen. I mean, stolen how? You know, he's also an adult, you know. How? So even this one of political parties, hakuna kuibiwa. Unaibiwa how? Na uko na agenda. You came here for a reason. You are pursuing that reason. What we don't have, and which I want to register to speak about, is party discipline. There is a whole history of how you become a member of a party. So you are a member of that party. Where is the party discipline to toe the line on your party structures, on your party constitution, on your party dispute resolution mechanism? That is the discipline we are lacking. But as far as being members of political parties, that of course is really how the democracy is going to go. It's just that this is the third election after the new constitution. So we had the first election, we've had the second election, we are now in the third election. And this conversation is going on. And we might even need now to sort of intervene around the role of opposition, which is what we now lost also with the new constitution. Parties come in their numbers, but then you have coalitions, the majority coalition and the minority coalition. But I like the theory of sharing money, that everybody gets money from their party. We don't get as a coalition. In fact, my own thinking now with our coalitions has become, we share the sitting room, but bedroom, usiku kila watoto wanaenda kwa nyumba yao. It was very painful for us to kill the TNA. In fact, part of our problems began with the death of the TNA. Nothing has been painful for Mount Kenya region like the death of TNA. So now we would have had TNA and URP, every child usiku, watoto wanaenda kwa bedroom yao. Mchana, tunashikana huko kwa issues na kwa interests. And the same even with Azimio coalition. Jubilee, ODM, Wiper na Kenya, watoto wote wanaenda kwa nyumba zao, lakini tuko kwa coalition ya Azimio. UDA, Ford Kenya, and the other partners including Kionjori's TSP are also in KKA. Tunakutana kwa sitting room ya KKA. Usiku kila watu wanaenda kwa bedroom yao na interest zao. That would be a very strong country.
You see Sam,
yes, Chris.
Let me say this. I want to add on to what Mheshimiwa said here. All political parties have their own sitting room. That sitting room is called Political Parties Liaison Committee. Any registered political party, we meet under that umbrella of Political Parties Liaison Committee. So it will also be a better thing if Political Parties Liaison Committee was funded, because out of the Political Parties Liaison Committee, then we'll be in a position to roll out more activities, and the parties that don't get the funding will also benefit from it.
How do you finance the operations of PPLC?
From the Exchequer through the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties.
Is it sufficient?
No, very small.
So it's financing for what at the moment?
Political Parties Liaison Committee activities.
What?
Within Political Parties Liaison Committee, we have what we call committees. So these committees meet once in a while, quarterly, come up with ideas that then we share as political parties. Then we take them to Parliament for enactment. Yes.
Yeah, and for how long have you been there?
For over 10 years now.
10 years.
Yes.
So what are some of those gains that you've made so far that you'd say the liaison committee is serving this particular interest? Even
the political parties funding, though the talk is still not, we have not reached where we want to be, but political parties funding is also a baby of the Political Parties Liaison Committee. Yes.
I think even the inclusion of women
and youth and
some programs around that.
Yes, we have.
Including even the two-thirds gender role.
Yes,
been a good partner.
And at a time, because I know one of the controversial things was the participation of PPLC in picking a representative to the IBC selection panel. How able are you to bring on board these political parties, and especially the big political parties? Because if you're talking about, say, UDA, which is under Kenya Kwanza Alliance, if you're talking about ODM, Jubilee, Wiper, which are under Azimio, One Kenya Coalition, and yourself, you're coming from Umoja na Maendeleo, how able are you to command authority to those big political parties?
Now, what's funny is that all these political parties, including the so-called let me call them big parties. Parties like UDA now, parties like UDA used to be POA, Party of Action, then went into PDR, so it was a small party, just like the others. And mind you, we don't have a small political parties in political parties liaison committee. All parties are equal, only that we are not in power. So all these political parties come into PPLC. When we have meetings for PPLC, we sit down and agree on the same issues that affect us as political parties.
Interesting.
Yes.
So let me get back to Honorable Priscilla first, because you mentioned something about party discipline, and you're here at a situation that just after the election, Azimio One Kenya coalition had actually the majority in terms of how many members had been elected and the political parties associating with the Azimio. Of course, tables stand, and you know what has been happening. As late as last week, the Kenya Union Party, KUP, signed up with Kenya Kwanza to mean that now they're associating with Kenya Kwanza and no longer Azimio. What has that meant, and is it a problem of the leadership in Azimio, or is just the fluidity of the political systems in Kenya that now we have that confusion that has Azimio even saying that this has to be resolved at the bipartisan process?
Yes, I think that one is the journey of growth. But then also the other one, which is a major one, is a presidential system. And what the president is doing is really how presidential systems behave. They raid, practically. If you look at Brazil, for example, you look at the US, there is a bit of raiding. The only thing is, how are we going to protect this? Because there is real risk that a presidential system will want majoritarian parliament for its own purposes, for the purposes of running the country. But then we also have on the other side the view of the voters. And the view of the voters is such that if they elect, in fact, I think that our democracy might crystallize into that. We will have a time when the president is not the one that is controlling the majority party in parliament. And that should happen. So that the president is elected as the president because we have the 50% plus one. Right. But then in parliament, the majority coalition, which is what happened in this election, the Azimio coalition was elected as the sort of larger coalition. But then, so accept that we are in a stage of growth, accept that it is not possible now, I think, for the presidential system to be able to survive with a parliament in which it does not control. And so that was, you know, ni kama ile ya Kenya, tunaelewa. Tunaelewa. Lakini after tumeelewa, we must also have protection for the opposition. And that protection for the opposition is, for example, why I support his view around the official leader of opposition. So we're going to have to survive with a presidential system with the weaknesses that it sometimes comes with, including what has happened. By the way, it's not new for Kenya. It is also happening in Brazil. It happens in other presidential systems because then a president wants to have a majority parliament to run. But then that majority parliament should also be backed by a strong opposition. And then the behavior of individual members of parliament. There is no harm in KUP joining the president's coalition.
Right.
And there is even no illegality. But what should happen, you can't just cross the floor hivi majestically, unatembea tu. You go back to the voters. You tell the voters now, we as KUP want to participate. We no longer want to be part of Azimio. We now want to come to you as members of Kenya Kwanza. And you ask the voters, what's your view on that? If you are an Azimio member and you want to cross over, you go and tell Azimio voters or whoever your constituency that for reasons, including the reasons they are saying of development, for reasons of development, I want to cross over from this side of the bar to the other side of the bar. And the voters give a view. The voters could agree with you, or the voters could say, no, as we still want to be in Azimio.
In what forum now?
You go back to election. There's no other forum. You go back to election. And that's the party discipline we need to get to. Because if we practice politics this way, like now, what happens is that you also have instability in the country. You have economics going wrong. And you know, for Kenya, politics and the economy are two sides of the same coin. So you practice bad politics, your economy responds immediately. We must have strong politics, stable politics, politics of leadership for the economy to be strong. There is no harm in me as a member of Jubilee choosing to work with the president. Absolutely no harm. But I must ask the people who sent me to parliament, do you agree with me that we should now cross over? But they could agree with you, they may not agree with you.
I thought that applied to say you were elected to Parliament on Jubilee
Yes.
ticket,
Yes.
then you decide that you want to associate with Wiper,
Yes.
you have to step back, relinquish your seat and go back to election.
That's true.
But if you're elected through, say, KUP, and that was under Azimio, but now you want to change your affiliation to Kenya Kwanza, do you directly have to seek
you have
election?
to
Because you're
seek
still
election.
under the same party?
Because KUP was a partner of Azimio, or was in the Azimio coalition. So as the people, and remember, we have a 6 election, isn't it, in one day?
Yeah.
So the people who voted for you under KUP also knew the presidential candidate you are supporting. And it could also be very well that they were also supporting that presidential candidate. But the best, and we could discuss about the forum for seeking the people's views. You must seek the people's views. Even if election is the harshest, we could find other ways, either delegates or there honestly must be a way in which, because individual members of parliament also need to be accountable.
Right.
And if we practice this politics that there's no accountability at all, I don't even know where we are leading the country. We must be accountable.
Okay.
You as an individual member of parliament, you as a senator, you as a governor, you as a president, you as an opposition leader must be accountable to the constitution and to the ideals of the constitution. And let me just finish that, because this, what we are saying, is what led to instability in Brazil. And it is going to cause us instability here in Kenya. Tukiendelea hivi tunaendelea. No adabu, no heshima, shakahola, massacre, I don't know, economy going down, Kenya shilling at 150. We are going to just mess this country with our eyes wide open. Why? Lack of discipline. We all just must be disciplined. We must be accountable. There is no other way.
Just hold on, Chris. Registrar, what is your reading of the law on what should happen to a political party that wants to change its affiliation in terms of coalition? Should those members elected under that ticket seek fresh mandate, or that applies to when you're elected to a party and you're changing affiliation?
I think we should separate the party from an individual. An individual elected leader has responsibility of representing the people, and he came through a particular political party.
Right.
A political party as an entity has instruments of governance, including a national executive council, NDC. Those are organs of the party that make decisions.
Right.
And it's the party that really decide how to move politics. Do they want to remain in this coalition or this other one?
Okay.
And to that extent, I do not think we may want to really say that a party cannot move from a coalition, because a coalition is presented in a manner according to the law, where they provide how you enter and how also you exit.
Right.
What is important to us, especially as a regulator, is that when you say that you shall enter like this and we shall exit like this, then you must follow the law. And you must follow your own coalition agreement, the one you entered willingly.
Yeah.
So when you went to exist now, then follow the same coalition agreement, and you say, we entered here, you are supposed to give notice here, we are supposed to exist like this.
Right.
So that is the only time we can say now you have legally existed the coalition. And the processes, some of these parties like KUP and others have already issued notice to Azimio that they want to exit. The issue is that they should follow that process of exiting the notice, and then they come and then they are cleared, then they move to the other side, legally.
Okay.
Yeah, so in terms of individual members, I think the party has an obligation to call its own membership to order, because the first regulation is actually the party. The party has instruments of regulating its own members. There's no way, for example, the Office of Registrar of Political Parties can call on individual members. It is the work of the party to ensure that discipline within the party is happening. You call onto your members. You have the instrument within your constitution to ensure party discipline within your membership.
Okay.
So that you don't, the party become an institution where you first of all deal with it's like just like a family. You don't call neighbors on your wayward child. If your child is beating your other child within the family, as a parent, you don't call neighbors, come, my child, my 2 children are fighting. No, it is you. And the U here is the party organs and the party instrument within the party constitution that should call their own members to order before they spill over to the other. But I think the divisions also within the parties, they keep dividing and getting different opinions so that they are not able to call then their members to order. I think we should have strengthened party organs that are able to work on the individual members when they err and they move out of the way.
And just before the election, you told us that some two political parties had given notice to exit Azimio and move to Kenya Kwanza. I think that was Maendeleo Chap and there was the party of Amason King, I forget the name.
PA,
yes, Pamoja African Alliance. So far, have you received notices of parties that want to exit either coalition to the other?
Yeah, there are some that gave notice that particular time. The only problem then was that the time was premature for them to do that, because the Azimio coalition has stipulated you can only give notice 3 months after elections. That's what they had committed to.
Right.
So even if you give notice before elections and the time, which is the timeline that is given in the coalition agreement, had not arrived, then we actually challenge that legally and say that you are premature in terms of giving that notice. But we have seen parties that have already gave now notice after the expiry of the 3 months. Some of them have finished that processing from Azimio. Others are still in that process because parties have a right to move from one coalition to another, or even exist in a coalition and want to operate independently.
So, for instance, I know UDM was one of the first to shift allegiance. Have they formalized their movement?
I think they are still on that process.
Okay, interesting. Chris, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I wanted to say, as much as all these political parties are essential to development and sustenance of any vibrant democracy, they're also crucial instruments, and one of them is the freedom, the rights and freedom of political parties, which must be protected under all circumstances. And some of these freedom and rights are the right to peaceful assembly, the right for freedom of expression and freedom of association.
So then, for you, what should be happening now? Do you agree that once a party shifts, they should seek mandate? But also, if your political party is moving to a different coalition and you do not agree with that idea, what should you do as an individual?
You just seek to get out of the coalition. That's simple.
How do you do that? Because the coalition...
Through the office of the registrar of political parties.
What should happen? Because I think there's a member of parliament from Kup who is not, who has been opposed to the movement to Kenya Kwanza. What rights exist for them if they're not willing to move with the party?
You see, they are within the party. They are actually within the party. Those are the issues that should be discussed at the party organs, and they agree. And you know, a party is ruled by a majority, but minority have their voice. Yeah, because it's a democratic process. The majority will actually take the day, but the minority must have their voice. It's upon the party now and the party organs to really then know how to let their members be heard.
Let me be specific, because Honorable David Kosing from Pokot South is actually a member of an oversight committee in Parliament, that is the PIC on Commercial Affairs and Energy. And he has been opposed to Kenya Union Party being affiliated with Kenya Kwanza. Now it has moved. What options exist for him? Should he now cross the floor into Kenya Kwanza, or should he continue to associate with Azimio in the House?
I mean, it's a bit complex for individual members, and that was our discussion earlier. Because Kosing is a member of Azimio. No, KUP, but he associates with Azimio. I think the only part of the problem that has affected our parties, and just using Kosing as an example, is also the level of internal decision making. It could also be very true that maybe he wasn't consulted on some of the decisions that the parties made. So one of the things, which is also the CMD approach, as we strengthen the parties, you're also strengthening the organs, because the only reason I become bound by the decision of my party is because I was included in the decision of my party. But our parties go and make decisions away from the members and then come with a decision and you're supposed to follow. So we've got a bit of a problem there around how parties make decisions. For even decision around, are we in Azimio or are we in Kenya Kwanza? Right. I mean, my own party is a good example. I mean, look at, we don't even know where we are anymore. But then we have to follow the organs of the party. And if the organs of the party and the signatures of the party and the signatories of the party are that we are in Azimio, then that's the position. And if you have any concerns within the party, there are internal appeal mechanisms, internal disciplinary and all that. But I wanted to come on to another point. And this is what we've been saying about the journey. So, and the law is such that law is in context. So this is now the context we find ourselves. It's taken a history for the political parties funding to, for example, get to the level at which more parties are benefiting. Now we have a new situation here of party discipline, including this question of the ruling coalition and whether the ruling coalition became the majority party by law, because there's a big question around that. But then, in terms of how we move from here, depends on then, do we need to strengthen the law? Do we need to strengthen the rules? And do we strengthen the parties? And that is going on. So my view has always been, we are where we are, what decisions can we make? So where Kosing is, we now have a dialogue that involves him on the opposition side and involves Kainan on the other side. So can a decision first be made on those ones that we can then use as precedent for continued cleaning up of the party? But offices like the registrars, again, you know, become very handy. Even sometimes, and sometimes, you know, when you post-mortem, you agree that we made a mistake. Even if it is the Kenya Kwanza, because some parties were on notice. Their notice had not lapsed for vacating Azimio. If the notice had not lapsed, it means that they were not available for joining the Kenya Kwanza. But we could safely say we are where we are. How do we learn from what has happened so that we protect the future? And because the future is important, and this instability in parties is what is causing instability in the country. And it's the same thing as, you know, and we keep referring to marriage. By the way, political parties are very close to marriage. If I'm married to him, I'm not available to marry you until I dissolve this marriage, and then I am now available to marry you, Sam. But I can't be married to him and to you, you know. Sure. I don't even know what we're doing as a country. Okay. So I must dissolve my marriage with Azimio legally to be available to marry Kenya Kwanza. And the law should be respected that way. So now we are going to need rules, because the presidential system will always do this. So if the presidential system will always do this, then what are the rules we set aside? Or what are the rules we put in place so that if he wants to cross, he knows these are the rules of crossing? Okay. Yeah.
And I want us to, because there's something that happened last week on Wednesday. Let's just watch this sort of drama that was at the Jubilee headquarters. Then you can take it away from there.
Sisi hakuna kitu tunauliza, hakuna kwa mtu tunaenda, hakuna cha mtu tunauliza, tunataka tu haki yetu. Na sisi kama chama tutafuata kulingana na sheria zetu, na hata wakati walijaribu kutunyang'anya chama, tulienda na tukafuata ratiba ya kwenda kotini mpaka tukapata haki yetu. Kwa nini sasa muje mtusumbue?
Okay, so earlier on they had been singing Uhuru Kiboko Yao as he made his way to the Jubilee offices. One Secretary General, Jeremiah Kioni, should I say embattled Secretary General, had been inside the building, stopping access into it by the team of Kanini Kega. And let me again start with you, Honorable Priscilla Nyokabi. First of all, who is the party leader of Jubilee Party?
President Uhuru Kenyatta.
The law says that after 6 months he cannot hold an office in a political party. How are you dealing with that?
I mean, I think articles in the Constitution help him, but then also there must be a process of succession, which is detailed in the party constitution. So that's what the party is going to go into. And anyway, some of these laws around retirement, because he's not the first to retire from office. I mean, the former Prime Minister, for example, has retired from office and still leads the ODM party. But we might need to look at it differently now. Because law is in context. It would ideally be good that he retires. But then, if your party is in limbo, your party members are refusing to toe the line, there is no other person. And unfortunately, I don't think that our party has anybody else who can crack the whip. So he had to come back. It's almost like the party has called him from wherever he was. But now you've got, and that has been for me the sadness. You asked me a good question about Parliament. That has been the sad thing about our own politics. It's almost like we are beholden to the party leaders. That if the party leaders are not there to crack the whip, we cannot exercise good democratic principles on our own. And so, you know, just be it. I hope that he comes, settles the party in terms of the two warring sides, and settles the internal party systems and internal party mechanisms so that they can be able to address. These fights should not come out to the public.
Right.
These fights should be within the party system, and the party system is able to contain them. But now that the party system was not able to contain it, then the party leader has to come back and do
you know who is the Secretary General now in Jubilee?
You know, to the extent that the legally gazetted one has not been ungazetted or degazetted or any of those things, then he remains the party Secretary General, Jeremiah Kioni. And even if Kanini is my own county mate, he would have to follow the law, and the laws would have to be followed for him to assume the position legally. But is what we are saying all the time. The two steps I told you, our parties are still not yet out of the woods in as far as these matters are concerned. Kanini was in the meeting that made Kioni the SG. That meeting, the meeting of delegates, made Kanini the director of elections. You know, I think there should be some respect around that. But this is an internal party matter. The party leader has convened a meeting of delegates. Let the delegates go back in a sober way and resolve the issues. You know, on how we get then...
is it May 19th?
I think May 22nd. 22nd. May 22nd, yeah. It's an internal party matter. But also, to the extent that the party leader is required to come and calm the situation, I think that just be it. It's just that all other parties should let our party, our bedroom. Remember we spoke about bedrooms. Our bedroom sasa imeshikwa na shida. Wacha watu wa bedroom washughulikie bedroom yao.
Okay.
Kila watu waende washughulikie bedroom zao. Wachaneni na bedroom ya Jubilee. Bedroom ya Jubilee itajipanga, it will clean up. I tell you, in fact, our own hope with Jubilee now was to go back to how the TNA was run as a party, because TNA was run beautifully. We had a good party. We were happily contributing our party contributions. We were serving our roles in parliament. We had party leadership. Women were respected in that party. We brought in the fund for the women reps, the National Government Affirmative Action Fund. We had other funds in budget committee. So if we could go back to that model of running things, and I personally even appeared before one of the disciplinary committees of the TNA and got cleared of any of those allegations that were against me. And that's how it should be. You have an independent panel of people who can hear a dispute. Even now between Kioni and Kanini, there should be an independent panel that can hear the dispute and say, you are this position and you are this position. That's what we are lacking. Even as a country, we're going to need to recall our elders. And not the church ones. In fact, I'm really hoping that this is also the chance for what I call mainstream religious churches, our bishops, come back, because these disputes will always be there.
Send them to
no, PPLC for a better advisory. Better advisory mechanisms, and also the thing about the discipline of queuing.
Yeah.
You are Secretary General today, you be Secretary General tomorrow. discipline of life.
Okay.
I think our bishop called it hygiene, political discipline, heshima, adabu, roho safi. I mean, is it a tabia me? I don't know where they want to take us.
I hear you. I know this is a contentious issue for you, Registrar, because I think the Political Parties Disputes Tribunal gave its judgment. Is it 19th of April, thereabout? And first of all, quashed your letter that you had written, acknowledging the decisions and the meeting that was held by NEC of Jubilee. But now, where should they go at a time that there's no longer stay orders from the tribunal on implementation of the NEC resolutions, but you have Jeremiah Kioni insisting is the Secretary General. You have an NEC decision saying that Honorable Kega is the Secretary General. So where do they go from here?
One, I want to say that we want to leave it, from an institution point of view, we want to leave it at the PPDT decision, which actually never categorically said what is the way forward. It's only went to the extent of saying that Article 47 of the Constitution was not implemented when we were writing that letter. Article 47 talk about fair administration action. So they expected when we receive, probably, that's my assumption, when we receive some filing, then we call the other side and tell them that we have received this kind of filings, and this is what. So they never addressed the substantive matter about the meeting and the decision by the party. So to the extent of the institution I represent, I think we wanted to leave it at that and acknowledge that there's a dispute in Jubilee party, and some function had sat, made some resolution, which were not cancelled by the court.
Right. Then
recently there was the other function also held some meeting, made some decision, which are now there. So sincerely speaking, the only thing we can acknowledge is that there's a serious dispute at Jubilee party. The meeting that was held by one of the function in Nakuru, the one that the tribunal was addressing.
Right.
In the judgment, when you read it, they never nullified those decisions. Then the other organ, the other function also come and hold a meeting. So we have two meetings and two functions that have held meetings. So we wait for them to conclude to the extent of what the tribunal and ourselves believe is that the party has organs, and that is what Honorable Nyakabi is also saying, that the party has organs that can sit down, then look at the issues that have been raised, and then they look for a way of coming together and solving their own dispute. Because as far as those two meetings, decisions have not been suspended either by court, because they address only one issue in our letter: whether fair administration action happened. And fair administration action here means that once a filing was done, probably we could have called the other team to tell them that this filing has been filed. But we want to respond also that they also wrote, the two functions wrote to us, and we responded to both letters. But the tribunal has its own decision, and we have ours also. So, and the party then has also its own mechanism and their own decisions. So we expect that the party, because Jubilee has very mature politicians, people who have been there, done that. So we expect that they'll find a way of coming together and then resolving their issues. Otherwise, when all those documents are filed again before us, we shall make a decision then at that particular time.
Chris, as you watch these, I mean, you don't have such problems, but is there a way that you can help? Does PPLC have any forum really to respond? It's just up to the internal dispute mechanisms and the ORPP and the PPDT eventually.
That is why I was telling Mheshimiwa Nyokabi they need to start taking PPLC seriously, because the reason PPLC was created was out of such kind of things that we are seeing on television. They start small, then end up bringing the country down. PPLC was formed after the 2007-2008 post-election violence. Johan Kriegler recommended that political parties should have a dialogue between them, the Register of Political Parties, and IEBC. Within PPLC, we have got subcommittees that deal with different kind of problems. Let me call them problems for lack of a better word. And one of it is the Legal and Dispute Resolution Subcommittee. So probably if they try that way and come back to political parties, because at the end of the day, they have a representative that represents them within PPLC, will get a solution from within the PPLC after they have failed to get a solution from their own party.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. And of course, the troubles of the Jubilee Party have been quite consistent since the last election, starting off with the situation that there has been meetings between members of Jubilee with the deputy president, with the president, holding that meeting in Nakuru that made that decision to have the likes of Jeremiah Kioni kicked out. But then one wonders, because I've heard before, Azimio is seeking to remove Sabina Chege from the deputy minority leadership. I don't know whether that has succeeded, but also they are pushing to be recognized as a parliamentary party, which is you must have 5% of the elected members, so that would be about 15 or 16, which they qualify. How does that go? Is that the intention? Is it sanctioned by the political party, or is it by the parliamentary group under Jubilee to dissociate from Azimio and become recognized as a parliamentary party with a possibility of having their own leader, whip?
Yeah, well, those are the new standing orders, which I think are in the right, because as we sit now, Jubilee is the third largest party. It's just the UDA and ODM that are larger than Jubilee. And Jubilee has been a ruling party, so it's got a history. And no, we are even learning from other jurisdictions. Parties have, you go up and you go down, you go up and you go down, depending on the electoral systems and seasons. And so there is hope that Jubilee can rise again and still occupy its space, either in the form it is or as a rebranded party. And so the law or the standing orders now allow Jubilee to be recognized as an independent party. But then Jubilee has to respect its internal decision-making organs, which are not just the parliamentary group. There are more organs than the parliamentary group. The parliamentary group is one organ, but you have the NEC, you have the governing council, you have the party leader structure. So I think that my earlier request was the right one. Let us retreat as a party. Once we retreat as a party, we can look at all these options and see what is best for the party. And then the party internal decision-making organs, because that is why the party has a spokesperson, because not all of us can give the party position. Even here, I'm just giving my own personal views as a lawyer and as a person interested in democracy, and also as the CMD chairperson. And at CMD, I sit there as chairperson, having been nominated by Jubilee. In fact, your earlier question was right. Who nominated me? It's Jeremiah Kioni, who is our YSG. And so the party has a spokesperson. So let the party retreat. Let the party look at all these options. Let the spokesperson of the party give the party position. But let also this be a learning lesson with what he says about PPLC. Let the Jubilee tribulations be a learning lesson and a learning curve for the country on the strength of parties, on internal dispute resolution, on respecting your organs, and even on the choice of which coalition to serve or not serve. But if individual members also want to go and support a different coalition, I think that the ORPP guided correctly, then that should also be available. But I think the best is, wacha tuingie kwa bedroom yetu, tuangalie haya maswala. The only thing for me is what it means for the country in as far as political parties are concerned. And one of the things I've seen as a weakness, which is what we have picked up at CMD, our parties are not prepared to serve as opposition. Our party is only prepared to serve as ruling coalition. And I think where we are going now, a party must have two ways of preparing for the election. You prepare to win, which means then you govern, but you also prepare to lose, which means that you prepare to be an opposition party with the same manifesto. That if, for example, at Azimio, we believed in one county, one product, that we continue with one county, one product. For example, in as far as Azimio counties are concerned, that Azimio governors, if we believed in a balanced budget, Azimio governors continue. So our parties, and we don't have even opposition at county level. You know, our counties are monolithic. If our county supports UDA, it is all UDA. And there is a value to to having different viewpoints.
Right.
That on affordable housing, there is the view of the ruling coalition, and there is the view of the opposition.
That is how the leader of minority.
Yeah, they don't have any opposition at all. And that is because our parties are not prepared, because our party should be prepared to be ruling and to be opposition. So there's a bit of space there.
Okay.
Then the space of manifestos, also a very big space. Do our manifestos provide for some of these issues?
Let me get this from you. So is an NDC able to overturn a decision of an NEC?
Yes, depending on the party hierarchies. It is possible. Anyway, now we have to go back to the Jubilee Constitution. We have to go back to what the Jubilee Constitution says. But as far as the Jubilee Constitution is concerned, there are also the official bearers and the official spokespersons, right, and the official lawyers. I mean, by the way, Jubilee is not exactly a poor party. So all those structures are there. Let those structures, okay, let the party lawyers, okay, go and look at the party constitution and then tell us. So, I'm sure by the time the party leader was calling a meeting, the party lawyers looked at the different scenarios. And this situation, let me say, it is embarrassing the party. So I think the earlier the party sorts it out, the better, because we still have good leaders, as it were. Okay. And many of us need to prepare to serve the role of opposition, and those who join government serve the role of government. But if you remain in opposition, then you remain to add value to the governance on matters that are at the table. And there are many matters on the table now.
Registrar, from practice, usually the NDC ratifies what has been decided by NEC.
Yes.
Is it also able to, what is the opposite? Can it do the opposite? To undo and install a different position?
I think it depends with the party constitution,
yeah, what
has been given by, what is it that the NDC is supposed to do. In some party constitution, that's why I cannot be able to specifically comment on a specific party. But generally speaking, in some party constitution, there are some party constitutions that say they should approve, others should ratify, others should confirm. It depends on the wording. Yes, because all those wordings have meanings of what the NDC can do. But it's important to note that NDC is the supreme organ of any party. It's the highest organ, because it's where representative from various grassroots organs sit. Therefore, finally it becomes the highest organ of decision making.
I want us to take a look at the feedback that has been coming to us this morning via Twitter at Citizen TV Kenya. Sam Gituko, the hashtag to use is Debrek. Bobo Chino is saying that Kenya should borrow a leaf from ANC, CCM, this is Chama Pinduzi, in South Africa and Tanzania respectively, to have a formidable political parties, not forgetting in the US like the Democrats and the Republicans, to resolve these teething problems among political parties. Lilian Sioi, you're saying the management of political parties in Kenya has been a significant challenge for many years. The lack of effective management has led to weak party structures, lack of internal democracy, and low public confidence in political parties. Kuria Solomon, parties are allowed to sign post-election coalition agreements. That does not require elected leaders to go back to the voters. Again, parties which signed up with Azimio have a period within which they are legally supposed to issue an exit notice. Amaganga, you said that CMD office was outspoken with active grassroots educational workshops in the years 2013-2016. What happened? It's the office which can help people, especially at the grassroots, to understand more about political parties and governance. Babu Michael, what can party registrar do to an MP who moves to another party immediately after elections without seeking fresh mandate? This has become a norm in this country, and it's very, very wrong. They do it because they know they'll get away with it. And then Asamo, thank you, Wakili Nyokabi, for being bold. An MP who wants to shift allegiance must face a fresh election in a by-election. That's the party discipline. Engineer Lazaro, you say that tough laws governing party hoppings and members poachings under Political Parties Act should be reviewed. For example, you can't leave people who voted for you based on particular party ideologies without going back to consult them. And again, I ask for a political party to be clear to be a political party. Do they really meet all the needed criteria? Like to have a number of offices in a number of counties, because I really doubt some of the political parties around. And ordinarily, I think the registrar ensures that you have offices in at least 24 counties. I think 1,000 members in each of those counties at the very, no, across the...
No, at least 24 counties.
24 counties.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are practically out of time, but I want to give you a moment to just close and also reflect on some of those, the feedback that has come in less than a minute.
Okay, thank you. The person who have done a tweet on what the OLPP can do on people who move from one party, one allegiance from probably one coalition to another. As currently is. And I think we talked about that.
Right.
That it is the party that is a member of a political party. So there's no provision for the register of political parties to actually whip a member within a political party.
Right.
It's actually the party that we should whip within its own members. So if we expand that space, then the regulation that Honorable Nyokabi was talking about, the regulations and the parameters of which probably other duty bearers can act should be put in place. But it starts now. It's only the party that has the mechanism of whipping its own members.
Okay.
And then move it from there. And then other issues then are filed in different other offices. The other issue probably, as I conclude, is the issue of membership. And somebody have said whether the parties meet the requirement. Before the elections, you remember we came up with being put in parties that they do not...
They're not allegations. It happened to me.
No, some of them are allegations. You know, it's an allegation until it's proven that actually you are not the one willing to join that political party. But currently, once you are registered by a political party, you are supposed to get a notification on your phone. So we have gone to close up all those loopholes, and the systems are working to ensure that membership. The issue of offices, political parties have, and I think Honorable Nyokabi can confirm that, we have been really inspecting political parties' offices, especially the headquarters offices are up to date.
Yes.
At the county offices, they are operational majority of the time, especially towards elections. But the offices are there. But sometimes, as he says, they may not have adequate funds to keep them open all the time. But we ensure that every quarter we inspect them and we find that most political parties have those offices.
That was 3 minutes. I requested for less than a minute. 30 seconds, Chris.
I like to urge actually the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, 12 political parties to liaison committee to be much stronger. We need more funding. You have seen the way Mheshimiwa Priscilla said, there's nothing much about political parties liaison committee as we are talking right now, but we want it strengthened so that we can achieve more. Other than that, I want to believe that we elect people's ideologies are not political parties.
That's debatable. Less than a minute.
Yes. One is that political stability is equal to economic confidence. So this political instability is further eroding the confidence in our economy, which is why the dialogue was, for example, a good way to go if it is well handled so that we can return confidence back to the electoral system. And we at CMD favor the multi-stakeholders kind of dialogue so that, and I agree that with Yazimio that this particular matter is very important for the democracy. That's why it's part of the issues on the table. So let's have political confidence. Let's always remember as we practice politics that political instability leads to or erodes confidence in the economy, and it's costing us. The other one is for the ORPP and all of us actually. We are from institutions that should be supporting the strengthening and the vibrancy of political parties. I think that now more than ever, we need to take up that duty so that we have vibrant political parties. And then lastly is the party discipline. That I think in the discourse of our law, the rules around party discipline now have to be developed, have to be codified, and have to apply so that then they can continue strengthening the political stability. But thank you so much for this discussion.
All right, asante sana. And vibrancy, you don't mean the quarrels, right?
Yeah, vibrancy, you know, is in different...
Yeah, because we've seen a bit of quarrels in some of the political parties. Thank you all for making time for us. Honorable Priscilla Nyokabi from CMD, Center of Multi-Party Democracy, also former Member of Parliament in Nyeri County. Also Chris Kilonzo from the Political Parties Liaison Committee, and Derito, Registrar Political Parties, for making time for us to have this conversation. Of course, we'll keep you posted on what happens. Remember that former Prime Minister and leader of Azimio, Raila Odinga, stated that the demonstrations are on. They would start at 6 a.m. It's now 8:10. Haven't cited any action so far. As soon as we will be bringing it to you. But for now, up next is Matters Social with Willis Raburu. My name is Sam Gituku. See you some other time. Bye for now.